Good morning, everybody. Again, trying to figure out the technology here, but I'm going to go ahead and go forward. It says my meeting is live and streaming, so I'm going to go ahead and do the meeting. I don't know why it keeps stopping, but I'm hoping that it will continue to stream. At any rate, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, my talk today. And at first, let me start with Victoria DeBonis. And you know because you're on my page, but I really wanted to do this because I feel that the CARES Act is really important to small businesses. But I do know that a lot of people are very confused with a lot of different options out there that are being offered by the government and local government and federal government. And there's so much out there, which is awesome, but you really need to understand what you're getting yourself into if you're a small business owner or if you work for a small business owner and you're giving them guidance. I'm hoping that the information I'm going to give you just on the CARES Act, primarily the Paycheck Protection Program, will help you understand what the options are. So with that, I'm going to share my screen with a little PowerPoint that I created and kind of go over the different options that are available with this product. So I'm hoping you guys can see my screen share. I don't see it right now on my page. Yeah, it's sharing. So the CARES Act, which is the Paycheck Protection Program, gives small businesses the ability to have a solution with your revenue crisis, particularly covering your employees' payroll. So there's some very crucial things that you have to understand about this in order for it to be effective for the business that you're in. So first of all, I'm going to say that there are two different loan types, and even with those two different loan types, there's actually a subtype in the 7A loan. And when I say that is there are traditional business owners that have W-2 employees that they pay, and then there's people that are pretty much sole proprietors like myself, where I just am the only one at this point. My business is almost a year old, but only I am working in it right now. So I don't have any 1099 employees. I don't have any W-2 employees. So we need to, they're still going to loan money on it, but you need to figure out that's a whole different option, and that starts tomorrow. So today I'm primarily going to talk about the 7A for a small business that pays W-2 employees. There are two different types of loans out there, and there's a little bit of confusion about that. There's this economic injury disaster loan, which is good up to $2 million, 3.75% over a 30-year period, and it is not subject to forgiveness. However, there's a caveat with that. If you apply for this, they will give you $10,000. And what happens is that $10,000, if you're denied for this loan, that $10,000 is forgivable. So that's, you can get this $10,000 in advance. You don't have to pay back the advance if you're forgiven. You can apply for both of these. That's another misconception out there. Both loans can be applied for. If you do get the $10,000, then you turn around and apply for the Paycheck Protection Program. And let's say you get $50,000. The $10,000 will be forgiven within the $50,000. So if you get $50,000, you get the $10,000 from this, you're not forgiven for $60,000. You're forgiven for $40,000 because they subtract the $10,000 off of the $50,000 they've loaned you. So you're still going to owe the $10,000. Or if you're denied this loan, you'll be forgiven that $10,000. But you're not going to be able to double dip. If you get $50,000 here, then it's subtracted. So, essentially you'll still owe it on this side, on this loan. So let me explain a little bit about why this loan is forgivable and what the caveats are in even getting this. So the reality is, in order to get the 7A, you need to first have a banking relationship with an SBA approved bank. Now, we know that there's big banks out there that are SBA approved. Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Chase are a few of them. it has become a little bit of a free-for-all, and what the banks are saying that they're going to allow you to, who's going to be quote unquote qualified or get first in line or what have you. Several days ago, Wells Fargo closed down their portal because they were overwhelmed and couldn't, continue to process. Bank of America went into the bank a week and a half ago. They didn't know anything about it. Then I finally got an email. They do have a portal open. All of the documents have to be downloaded into their portal. Specifically, they tell you do not go to the bank, do not try calling the bank, don't give any documents to the bank. So make sure that you follow instructions very carefully. And the biggest thing is to get first in line. As soon as you know you want to get this loan, as soon as you know that it's available, you need to apply right away because funds are limited. I did hear the president a couple of days ago say that he was going to get back and get back to Congress and try to get a second loan. So with that being said, how do you calculate it? Well, calculation of payroll, banks are able to choose different parameters. Some are choosing 2019 940s, W-3s, and W-2s. If you don't know what those are, you need to go to your payroll specialist and get that information from them. Or, if you have an accountant that you use, if you have a controller, somebody's probably going to have to help you get this documentation together. So, that's kind of the deal with that. They're using different parameters. So I've done this 4 times over. Some of them were like the previous 12 months before the loan is there, like, March of last year to March of this year or something to that effect. Some of them are using 2019. It's a little ambiguous with the documentation. The other thing that's good with the calculation of the payroll amount is that if your company is providing a 401k contribution or matching to the employees, you can use that in the figure. You can also use your health insurance if you're an employer. If you're paying, let's say, 50% of your employees' health insurance premium, you can also put that into the calculation. It also says 1099s, which is interesting because that, again, people are asking, is it all 1099s? Is it 1099s of people that would act in place of somebody that was hired as a W-2 employee? So that's a little vague as well. I will tell you that what I did is I applied. I went online, I put in my 941s, I put in my W-3s, I put in my 1099 contractor list, 401k contributions for the client that I was working with, and did the calculation, totaled all that up, divided it by 12, and multiplied that times 2.5, and that was the loan I requested, and these were the backup documents. So just documenting how much you can get has turned into not as easy as you think it is, but it's very doable if you have good records and you have somebody along who can help you find those records and get that calculation done for you. Now, once everything's submitted, when I talked to the banking officer, they said 72 hours when it's funded. We put this in last Friday, still haven't seen funding yet, still haven't gotten any feedback from the bank, but I do know that they're overwhelmed. So I'm thinking it's going to take probably a week, at least 5 or 6 business days before we get any funding from this. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, just applying for the Paycheck Protection Program just for a small business. We aren't talking about sole proprietors. That application opens up at the banks tomorrow. But I do want to stress to you, you must go online to get this particular loan. The economic injury disaster loan, you have to go to the SBA and get that loan. 2 different places. It's a little confusing. So the biggest thing that scares me about this particular loan is there's a lot of conflicting advice. Be careful of scammers. There's going to be people out there that are going to say, oh, I can help you apply. I'm going to charge you a fee. There's a lot of stuff going on out there. So please, please, please be careful that you're dealing with somebody reputable if you're asking them to help you with this. At the end of this, again, if anybody has questions, I'm available. I will answer whatever questions I can. I don't know everything, but I'm gathering as much advice and information from credible sources as I can to disseminate to you. So what do you have to do to get the loan forgiven? So this is the B part of this whole thing. Meticulous documentation. They're basically saying if we give you $50,000, remember that they're giving you 10 weeks of payroll for an 8-week period. However, there are other things that can be covered with this. So first, I want to say that they're very adamant about, and I don't again know how they're going to prove this, but whether or not employees have been laid off or not. So they're saying you can't have any employees laid off. Now, that's subjective as well. So we're dealing with a lot of subjectivity here. That 8 weeks of payroll, so say that you've got $50,000 worth of funds that you've received, and you have, you're using it for payroll, but you can also use it for rent, for your mortgage interest, which is interesting, not the principal, but the interest, and utilities, as well as, let's see, it was interest, rent, utilities. Yeah, those were the three. And sorry, I'm looking at another screen and I can't see the whole screen. So that's why I moved my picture. But, oh, you probably didn't see that. There's a slideshow. At any rate, that is, so you have to meticulously document what you're spending the money on. What's going to happen at the end of this is, let's say at the end of 8 weeks, you've only spent $40,000. Well, the other $10,000 is going to be a loan, or you've had to spend it on other things that don't total up to that amount, like your rent and your utilities don't equal whatever that balance, that 2-week balance difference is. That's the 25% that they may come back and charge you for, or basically not charge you for, but you have to pay that. That's not forgivable. So let's say 25% is not forgivable. What's the ramifications of that? Well, the 25% that's not forgivable that you haven't used for payroll, rent, or utilities, that amount, there's going to be a 6-month deferral. It's a 2-year loan at 0.5%. So it's still not the end of the world, but just letting you know, it may not all be free, and it's subjected to the bank deciding, what is, it isn't going to be forgiven, from what I'm understanding. Also, just so that you know, a couple of points I missed is when you're doing your payroll calculation, you can also put in your state taxes that you have to pay for state unemployment, but not federal taxes. You cannot include any federal taxes, basically FICA, that you have to pay for your employees. So I forgot to mention that part. It's a little minor detail, but I did want to let you know that. I just remembered that I forgot to mention that. And then also I wanted to mention that, just be careful with what you use this money for, that you document it very, very carefully. Again, as I said before, when you get the Paycheck Protection Loan, if you've gotten the SBA one and there's $10,000, you have to subtract it. So that $10,000 would also be, be charged back as far as you having to pay it. But it is a low interest loan, so it does help. I think that they're going to probably extend or make some changes to this as they go on, because I don't think 8 weeks is going to be enough. But that remains to be seen. Unfortunately, like I said, you just have to be careful about your bank and what you qualify for. Some banks are requiring that you have an account with them, that you have a line of credit. That was Bank of America that came up with that. There's various things that the banks are putting out there that aren't necessarily consistent. So I'm just saying, you may need to have somebody help you do this. Okay, so there are other options available. Some states have loan funding. Florida has a disaster loan available, this Florida Small Business Emergency Bridge Loan. I have not looked into this yet. I do know that Texas and New York, San Francisco, Los Angeles, all these other states are also offering, if you're not from Florida, but you have businesses in these other places. What I encourage you to do is start with this Paycheck Protection Program as quickly as possible. And if that's not enough, then look at all of these others where you're not qualified, or for some reason they deny you. And I don't know what the percentage of people actually being successful in getting it is yet versus they're getting denied. But also be looking at these other sources of money, because again, if this doesn't, if revenue doesn't come back in 8 weeks, you still may need some of these other sources, and it's best to get in line as quickly as possible to, get the funding there so that you have your cash of money available to keep your business afloat. And that's the idea, is we want to keep as many businesses afloat and working, and our employees employed as long as we can. There are other options available. The 7B, as we said, is, forgivable. The paperwork is extensive and complex, but, it's doable. There's other state loans and grants. There's another program for sole proprietors and 1099 employees. I have yet to get the details on that. I'm still waiting to see what exactly they're going to be offering with that. So as soon as I get more information on that, then I will be able to let you know what the details are. They haven't told us what the documentation is going to be. We're thinking that it's going to be a Schedule C, but they haven't said whether it's the revenue that they're going to be taking on that, if it's going to be the net income that they're taking on it, and then, how are you going to be able to document what the money was used for? So, for instance, it's easy to document a paycheck run is being spent and rent is being spent for a small business. For a 1099 employee, the documentation as far as what the money is being spent for, I think it's going to be different, and it's going to be a little bit more difficult to document and to apply, because some people that are, attorneys and accountants and, doctors that are sole practitioners or what have you, are definitely using it for rent, but they also need to pay themselves. And they may not necessarily be paying themselves with a 1099. They may be just doing draws out of the company. I mean, there's a lot of variations for this, so I'm not quite sure what the details on this is going to be. If you are a 1099 employee, the state, for one of the first times, is, at least in Florida, have fun with this one, guys, is actually offering unemployment assistance. That was very difficult to get before when you were a 1099 employee. But as most of you can see in Florida, I mean, literally the site has crashed. There are paper applications going in. I think it's going to take weeks to get money from this. So I know that you definitely have bills that need to be paid for, but, wow, this is going to be quite a process to go from 6,000 people applying a month to 60. And I don't know if it's even more than that now. It's going to take a while for them to sort through getting money to people, from what I think and I believe, and I'm sure most people feel that same way. There's a 504 loan. Again, no forgiveness, but very low interest rates, very extensive, complex. SBA has other bridge loans. I'm suggesting also that, personally, if you've lost your job, and again, this was more about the Paycheck Protection Program, but personally, I'm going to say that you need to apply for unemployment if you've been laid off, ask for deferrals for your mortgage, for your car payments, for your insurance, for your utilities, for credit card payments. As you probably know, I've logged into Bank of America, and they've got a big button at the top of their page saying, do you want to defer? So a lot of companies are being proactive. Some companies aren't even billing you. I think the other day I saw with Comcast, they're like, we're not billing you for the next 2 months worth of they're just not going to do it, because I think the overwhelming amount of people calling in and trying to get their expenses deferred, they just said, forget it. We're just doing it across the board. So you'll find that without expectation, sometimes you'll see that your minimum payments, I don't know if credit card companies are doing this now because they're getting overwhelmed with the phone calls. So I think for the next 2 months or so, a lot of places are just automatically doing the deferrals. But in your best interest, I would call or go online and look. Just be really careful. Some people have asked me about credit being affected. I really don't think credit is going to be affected unless you were so bad off prior to this. That's another consideration. But if you've been paying your bills on time and your credit's been good, I really don't think that your credit is going to be affected by deferring what needs to be paid. Now, deferral doesn't mean that you never pay it. It means that when you get back on your feet, that you get things paid back, as quickly as you can. And that's another whole episode to talk about at some point in time, as far as, prudent management of money. And we're not going to get into that here. But last but not least, we're landlords. We don't want to see our tenants not pay their rent, because there are some sources of them getting money. But if you have to defer your rent payment, call your landlord and see if that's available for you. Also, I noticed that a lot of the cities like West Palm Beach is giving 2 months worth of rent payment. Now, I'm sure that you have to be at a certain economic level in order to qualify, but please make sure that you check into all sources that are available for you. So if you can check and see if you can get your rent paid, that will certainly help your landlord a lot. Yes, there is a possibility that they can get some of this funding as well. It is the tenant's responsibility to go get that money from the city if they want to get the 2 months worth of rent, deferred rent, or rent from the city. But I really think that it is best if we all work together to help each other. So, please do your part also in helping keeping the economy going, because remember, it's, everybody relies on everybody. And, it's really helpful if everybody does their part, and, don't just sit home and give up. There are so many things that you can do to help mitigate whatever the situation is. So I'm here to, again, provide whatever guidance I can to help anyone out there that, just needs questions answered, and is a little bit unsure of where they're going and what they're doing. I don't have all the answers, but I'm very good at finding solutions to the problems. I just thought that it was really important for me to, even though it took me a couple of days to get this all going, it was so important for me to get this information out, because the people who I am talking to, they're so confused about what's available. So I will do another one of these as soon as I get more information on the sole proprietor, because I know that's the next huge thing that people, are asking me is, well, what do I do if I'm not a business with W-2s? And I wish I had more answers for you. And as soon as I do, I will definitely shoot another Facebook Live. All right. So anyway, thank you very much. And everyone have an amazing day. And, just let me know if you have any questions. Thanks. Talk to you soon.